Good evening, ladies and menfolk. Welcome to episode 80 of Word Ninjas Live. We're senior citizens now. We're old. I don't know how that happened.
Time just kind of crept up on all of us, man.
Apparently. As always, I am your instigator of creative productivity and insanity, Charles, and joining me are my regular co-hosts, Will.
Hello.
And Calvin.
What Will said.
The rest of our crew is off doing various dangerous shenanigans for the good of humankind and whatnot. So it's just the three of us tonight. But we still have all sorts of things to talk to you about tonight. The first thing of which is our talking point for the week. And the talking point for episode 80 is, what are examples of storylines that have impressed you, and examples of storylines that have effectively underwhelmed you? So basically those that have stuck with you for good or for bad. And this can be books, anime, manga, video games, movies, TVs, shows, radio sitcoms, whatever source of media you enjoy or appreciate. I will kick things off since I put my reminder notes in the show notes. For the good storylines that actually really resonated with me, for video games, it's got to be Fallout New Vegas. Admittedly, I have yet to finish the actual storyline, but there's so much content built into that world. There's so many side missions and characters and just interesting stuff to see that I can't get enough of it. And it helps that there's also 5 DLCs for it, all of which are fantastic. So that one's definitely one of my favorites for video games. If we're going to go for the more traditional media, like books, I'm actually going to go back to Michael Kep's Invasion of Heaven. That is the name of the overall series, and I'm going to specify that rather than just the first book because I know the second book's coming out soon, and I still want to know what the hell happens to those characters, so I have a feeling it's going to be just as engaging as the first book, which was fantastic, as hopefully Calvin can also attest to.
Yeah, you're not the only one that was incredibly engaged by that book. I'm really looking forward to the second one, just to figure out what the hell is going on and to get some backstories.
Yeah.
I'm particularly interested in one character that we have a bit of contempt for.
I really hope that Michael's at Book Expo this year. I think his book comes out after Book Expo, unfortunately, but hopefully he's at least there to say hello to.
It comes out in June, correct? June or July?
I want to say July. I forget offhand, but I think it was after Book Expo or very close to it, so
Right.
I'd have to double check with him. But yeah, that one I still remember, and it's still on my bookshelf over there. I'm probably going to have to reread it again before I read the second one, just to get back into it with the characters.
And I may have to do the same.
And for those of you who haven't read it, it's definitely worth checking out, because it's a fantastic read.
Yes.
Trippy, though. But in a good way.
Yes, yes.
And I'd probably get in trouble if I didn't mention Fairy Tail, because I'm sure Richie's going to listen to this tomorrow. But no, really, that is one of the best manga series that I have read. The only other ones that have really stuck with me are like Yu Yu Hakusho, because that was one of the first mangas that I actually read from beginning to finish, and that one's considerably better in the manga form than the anime, because they skip a few things at the end, which is sad. Actually, also Fruits Basket for manga. The manga is infinitely better than the anime, because it actually finishes the damn plot. The anime skips so much, and that's a fantastic little series. But now for the ones that I just can't get into. And I'm going to probably get some hate for these, or at least some snarky commentary, but for video games, Destiny. Admittedly, it's because I enjoy storylines a lot, or I enjoy character arcs, and Destiny doesn't have that. Destiny is pretty shallow in regards to the storyline. It's more about the gameplay than anything else, and I don't know, I just don't care that much. It's nice, it's really well done, but it's not as engaging as other games out there. As for books, The Silmarillion by Tolkien. It goes so far in depth into the back story of that world, and that's fantastic because it's really nice that he took the time to do all of that, and it's all there, it all ties together, but it is just so dry. I can't stay with it. It's If we want to get contentious, it's like reading the Bible for me. That's how dry it is because there's so many names to remember and keep track of. I just can't do it. And for anime, or just video media, the Gundam verse in general. I have yet to get into a single series of Gundam, period. I don't even know why. I like mechs. I like futuristic series, but none of them have really caught my interest. And I'm not sure why. But yeah, that was really my short list of media out there with storylines that either really caught my attention or really didn't. I think it's really more the ones that have overarching concepts to them that I can either really appreciate or associate with, or ones that have really good character arcs where you see the progression from beginning to end. If it doesn't have that, I don't care. I can't get into it. It's just not for me. I'm curious what other people have to say about this. Hopefully I'm not the only one that has issues getting into storylines sometimes.
Oh no, I've got a short list too.
Hopefully it's not too short. We want to fill out the whole podcast.
Short is a relative term. Luckily Ed's not here. I'll start with ones that really held me, really pulled me in. This I'll follow CJ's format for video games, just so I can keep track of them in my head. Otherwise, it'll become a jumbled mess. Excuse me. For video games, there were probably a few where I love video games with good stories, and there were a couple of Final Fantasies. Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy X. I almost beat Final Fantasy VIII. I know everything except for what happens immediately after the final boss fight. But I loved that story. And Final Fantasy X is the only Final Fantasy I beat, and I love anyone who's beaten Final Fantasy X can probably attest with me that it's got a great story, matched with good gameplay.
Yay!
Yay! But yeah, I loved Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy X. Would play them again. Want to play them again. Love to play Final Fantasy VIII again and actually beat it someday. That's a huge time investment. And Borderlands. Borderlands 2. I loved the story that they had there. I loved the delivery of the story. Because they threw in some surprising plot twists here and there that I didn't see coming. So every time they threw it in, I was like, wait, what? 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 Really? This is in my silly little first-person shooter?
How's the Borderlands universe overall, as I think you're the only one on the crew who has played all three games?
It holds up fairly well. They've managed to keep some consistencies. There's a little bit that gets a little wonky when they threw in the pre-sequel because they had to do some backpedaling because it takes place before Borderlands 2. But it mostly works out. It's like little side things like how they have laser guns in the pre-sequel that aren't in Borderlands 2, and you go, well, why? And there's in a loading screen somewhere it says something about some kind of issue with Marcus, and I could never, when it popped up, my screen loaded too fast, so I never got to read the whole thing to figure out why, but
chances are Torg blew them all up.
it was something about some kind of licensing or rights issue because all weapons go through Marcus because he's like the only gun seller on Pandora. So all companies are supposed to legally sell through him because he has a monopoly on the market. And there was I never could finish reading it, but there was some kind of issue with why they weren't allowed on Pandora. And also the cryo weapons. They added the cryo element for freezing people, but you don't see that in Borderlands 2. It just kind of like, yeah, it was a thing on the moon, and it never went on Pandora. A couple other little things. But all in all, I've had fun trying to piece together the overarching story for Borderlands, trying to figure out what company had the control of what planet at what time and why they were kicked off and who replaced them and why, and that's a whole thing I won't get into here too much. But yeah, Borderlands, the whole story, especially like in Borderlands 2, I just loved. Someday I'll check out that I think it's a point and click style adventure from who did it?
It's Tales of Borderlands by
Telltale.
Yeah.
Telltale Games put out a Tales of Borderlands. I'm gonna wait till all the episodes are out though, because they'll probably put like a multi-episode sale out instead of spending full price for each one individually.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by that one. Telltale does some really good storytelling.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's some of the games. For books, you know, some Michael Crichton stuck with me. Jurassic Park, the novel. Movie was okay. Novel was fantastic.
The novel was incredible compared to the movie, which was respectable in its own rights.
Mm-hmm. And Lost World, the novel, was fantastic. Much better than the movie. They screwed some things up there.
I don't really remember much overlap between the book and the movie. I feel like they departed considerably, but it's been forever since I've read it.
It was weird because they didn't line up the plot with the title. It was like the second Jurassic Park movie was Lost World, but the third Jurassic Park movie more closely followed the plot to the novel Lost World. It was a little weird.
Maybe that's what threw me off.
And his Andromeda Strain series was very interesting read. I read that one a couple times. I recommend it for anyone who hasn't read it. It's about a satellite crashing to Earth and releasing an incredibly deadly alien virus, and the lives of the people affected by it who have to study it. It was pretty interesting.
I've always meant to read that series, and I just haven't.
It's just one novel, so if you want to borrow it from me, if you don't have it, we can work something out. But I recommend it.
Well, I've already given you enough books to read. It's only fair that you give me some at some point.
And from the Salvatore series, and it might just be because it was my entryway in, but the Hunter's Blade trilogy. I really like the storyline for that one. It's pretty decently into the story, but it was my entryway in. I started reading with that one and then backtracked. But that was a good one, and the Sellsword trilogy, especially parts 2 and 3. Promise of the Witch King and Road of the Patriarch had some very interesting concepts in it.
I vaguely remember that trilogy.
I liked how Road of the Patriarch questioned what it means to be king.
Oh, that one.
Mm-hmm.
That was good.
I don't want to go into details because spoilers, but they start to question what it takes to really be a leader, a king. And it's very interesting. And other than that, like I can go into manga, anime. I loved Negima, Magister Negi Magi. Long series, but really good series. I just wish that Del Rey was able to stay around long enough to finish it because Kodansha finished it off. They like absorbed Del Rey, and they kind of started skimping out on extra details. The translations kind of got dumbed down, and they took out, like, the series had this really cool section at the back of every volume where they not only explained a lot of magic spells happen in Negima, and they were usually cast in the language native to the spell's origin. So you'd have them in Japanese, you'd have them in Latin, you'd have them in Sanskrit, all
That's a
depending
nice
on
touch.
who was casting what spell. And it would be written in Sanskrit or in Russian or in Latin, and then translated either on the bottom or in the back. And they'd actually do a little like history lesson to show that there was some research done into these spells. They would break down what the spell words meant. Like, this is the English translation of this spell, and then break down why those words are used to cast this spell, especially when relating to deities or mythical creatures. And then when Kodansha kind of took over, they were just like, whatever, just translate it into English, we don't care anymore. And I don't know, it took a lot of depth out of it, because it was interesting to see the research they put into it. And then Kodansha was like, whatever, just fill the back of the book with fan art.
It's one of the unfortunate complications of having one of the big publishers take something in.
Yeah.
They have the resources to do anything because they're so big, but because they have so many projects, they kind of spread themselves way too thin, so they just churn stuff out.
They also changed translation honorific usages, so things got weird halfway through and people were suddenly speaking like slightly different dialects.
Did they get 4-kidsed?
No, thankfully no, but one of the characters, she was supposed to have a dialect, but when Del Rey was translating it, she would use the San honorific, like everyone else, for like the standard formal, like Mr.
Yeah.
But I guess she was supposed to have a particular dialect that wasn't translated through when Del Rey was translating it, so when Kodansha took over, she started saying Han instead of San, which is just supposed to be like a weird dialect twist. But she's the main character. So
you're
like,
going to notice that.
Yeah, somewhere around volume 30-something, all of a sudden she starts calling people Han instead of San, and it's like,
Is that a typo? What is going on here?
and then they specifically explain, oh, it's because she has this dialect. And it's like she does, suddenly, all of a sudden. But the overall arcing story I loved, and I still remember it to this day. And
I was just going to sneak in, although not really complete parallel, but it reminds me of when I was watching Rurouni Kenshin, and I was watching the subtitled for about half of the way, but then for a couple episodes I switched over to dubbed, and that freaking shopkeeper.
Yes, I know exactly. Yep,
Like,
yep. How you all doing, hon? Come down to get you some of that miso soup.
what the hell?
1800, like 19th century Japan. Where did we get the Texan lady from?
Because time travel.
It's because she's supposed to be from the southern part of Japan, which has a special dialect. So when they translate it into English, they use an English southern accent, even though it makes no sense whatsoever. But those are stories that stuck with me. I can't really think of like any kind of movies or anime other than like I could always go back to Cowboy Bebop and I was actually just listening to the soundtrack to Cowboy Bebop the other day and having all kinds of flashbacks. I was complaining to Calvin about that. I was like, just one song and I'm a big crying baby. Because I remember everything that happened.
You know, Cowboy Bebop never gave me feels like that, but I do understand what you mean. Like that, like there were some scenes that were hard to deal with.
Mm-hmm. But there are two scenes where I get misty-eyed in Cowboy Bebop towards the end. The end, and there's one before that. For anyone who's watched it, it's the end of the episode Speak Like a Child. That one always gets me. I can't help it. Sad face.
It's yet another series that I have never seen a single episode of, and I feel bad about that because I've heard nothing but good things about it.
You should find the time for it. I mean, it's 26 episodes, I think.
Yep, 26.
So it shouldn't take too long to get through.
It's about the same length as Wolf's Rain, and I've already powered through a third of that.
Yeah. I think Wolf's Rain a little longer. I think it's like 30
Wolf's Rain
something.
is 30 episodes, I
Yeah.
think, because I watched
Yeah.
10 on, I want to say Hulu.
Probably.
Yeah.
That's where I watched it. That one gave me feels.
Yep, same here. Yeah, Wolf's Rain is 30 episodes. Before those episodes are just recaps.
Yeah.
Well, that's cheating.
As for stories I could not get into, like Charles, I could piss a lot of people off. I talked about some great Final Fantasies that I loved, but there's a Final Fantasy I could not get into. Simply for, I don't know why. I tried playing it and I could not get very far in. I just stopped, and it's Final Fantasy VII. What most people would consider to be the best, most popular Final Fantasy, I can get through like Midgar stuff, but once I leave that city and get out into the open world, I'm just like, I don't care anymore. Well, I don't know. I never get off the first disc of the game. I was just like, I don't care. I'm not into it. I know there's a story here. I can see that there's some big story here. I've heard that there's some big, huge story here. I don't care about that story, I guess. I don't want to be mean. It's a fun game, and I'm sure the story is great. It just, for some reason, does not hold my interest at all. I still have it over here somewhere. Maybe someday I'll power through it, but that's a lot to power through those old Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, Final Fantasy VII went on forever.
Yeah. I think the Final Fantasy VIII, I think I had almost 100 hours in. Probably more.
Well, that's me in Fallout New Vegas. I'm already in the triple digits for hours invested in that game.
Yeah,
I will piss off a lot of people right now by officially declaring I have not played a single Final Fantasy game yet. I just never got around to it. I never had one, so.
they're big time investments. You have to have a lot of free time, especially since all the old ones have save points that you have to find. So every time you play, you have to invest time to it, just because you have to play until you find the next save point. And towards the end of the game, that can mean playing for an hour or longer straight.
That would have been me years ago. I could play for 4 or 5 hours at a time. Nowadays, you're lucky if you get me in for an hour and a half straight.
What else was I gonna say? Book. That's like the only game I could like. Most of the other games I played, I liked. It was just Final Fantasy VII that I was like, whatever. There's other games that I never played because I was like, I don't care. But that's just a huge list. I can't think of any right now. There was one Salvatore book. I can't remember the title of it, unfortunately. I'd have to get up and go look. But there was one that I had to really force myself to read. It was all about Wolfgar, and it was him as a miserable wreck of a man, and it was just like, I get it. He's depressed. Did we need a full-length novel to tell me this?
Apparently, yes.
Yes. All long arcing series have that. I'm sure many of the Harry Potter fandom can agree, if you've read them. Order of the Phoenix. Yeah, that one took some work to get through. All the other books I really liked. Order of the Phoenix, I was like, I'm only reading it to move on and get to Half-Blood Prince.
I mean, there were some great parts in that book, but overall, it did seem the slower of the 7.
Yeah, it's just that unfortunate, when you do that long arcing stories, it's that unfortunate setup novel where you're prepping for the conclusion that's going to come in the last couple. They're hard to read. I'm trying to think of other things.
Out of curiosity, where does the dot hack verse fit into everything that you've experienced? Because I know you've
Which
seen
part?
the animes and also played the games. I've only seen the animes.
Okay, dot hack sign, love it. And thank you for reminding. I was actually just thinking about dot hack the other day. I don't know why I couldn't think of it. Dot hack sign, love it, absolutely. The first dot hack video game series, which doesn't have an overarching name, it was 4 games: Infection, Mutation, Outbreak, Quarantine. It continues from dot hack sign. Loved it. Loved the whole set. Dot hack Liminality, which was an OVA that you got with the dot hack video games, and it took place at the same time but in the real world with different people. Amazing and explained a lot.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one yet.
It's really cool. It parallels the game, and like there's a lot of weird stuff that happens in the game that you get to see the real world I just had the word on my head. The real world the real world consequences of.
I'd love to
And
see that.
there's a part during the final boss battle of the game where you're fighting the boss and the game crashes because the boss has so much data that it's too much for the servers to handle. But
Uh-oh.
then gets rebooted and you're put into another place where you can fight the boss and have a bit of an advantage. And from the game perspective, it doesn't make that much sense. It's just a thing that happens. But when you watch the OVA, you find out that the people in the real world were stationed at a supercomputer waiting for this boss battle to happen. And when it happened, they transferred the location to the supercomputer to give you more space to fight.
That's cool.
Yeah. It also explained more of what happened in the past to create the virus in the first place.
Now I want to see that, because Dot Hack Sign was my favorite anime from that entire verse.
I have the OVA, so we can make time for it. It's not super long. There was a manga that came out called Dot Hack Legend of the Twilight. Really short, really cute, but overall meh. Anticlimactic at the end. They made an anime from that, which has nothing to do with the manga, except it has the same characters.
I think that's where the disconnect happened for me with those two.
You can skip Legend of the Twilight. Honestly, it's like a fan story.
The
So
manga is a nice little read, but I'm about the same with you on.
it was kind of anticlimactic at the end. Like they
Yeah.
set up for something grand, and then it was just nothing.
I think compared to Dot Hack Sign, it's just a little underwhelming.
Then they released Dot Hack Roots, which is pretty cool because it was like a relaunch because they, according to the story arc, the servers that held the world caught fire,
That's
and
bad.
some of the data was destroyed. So they took what was left and merged it with another game they were working on to create The World 2.0.
Oh, what could go wrong?
I mean, it worked. It's an interesting world. It has some. I like the fighting mechanics to it, but I liked the world building in the first world better. The players were pissed because all their characters were lost, so everyone had to start over again. They weren't happy about that. Dot Hack Roots is pretty good, but like with the first set, Dot Hack Sign leads into the Dot Hack video games, but at the same time they're independent. You can just watch Dot Hack Sign and get a complete story. Dot Hack Roots directly leads into Dot Hack GU, which is the 3-part video game based off of it. So when you get to the end of Dot Hack Roots, it kind of ends, but the story isn't over. And it's actually the same main character for the game in the anime. Whereas before, the main character for the anime was different than the main character in the game. So at Dot Hack Roots, you almost have to play Dot Hack GU to see how it ends.
Hmm.
And it's not. I never finished it because that one was a little harder to stick with, just because the story was good, but the levels were really repetitive. And that's where it kind of lost me. It was more of a gameplay thing where I was like, oh, I'm going through this level dungeon again and fighting these things again. There was less variety as opposed to the first game set, so I kind of just was like, I'm doing the same thing over and over again, even though it's not the same thing. Whatever. Have to play
Stop that. Every time I want to check comments on my phone, it pops up the video, and of course my audio is at full volume, and I can't pause it in time.
But
Continue.
that's where I would stand on Dot Hack. I do want to finish Dot Hack GU at some point. I was about halfway through it, and I probably can just pick up where I left off. It's just the games are huge because there's lots of side quests you can do. There's, like a Final Fantasy game, you have to do some grinding, some leveling up. And there are a lot of side characters you can collect that will have you do side things that have nothing to do with the main storyline. But like in the first one, it was interesting because there's a virus infecting the world, and as you progressed, you could see this virus infecting the world. The game would start to glitch out. You'd go to levels, and there'd be weird data floating around, and the graphics would be broken, and the music would be looping weird and be broken, and bosses would be glitched to have infinite health, and you had to hack them. And it gets to the point where even one of the capital cities is so glitched out that you can't go there. It's the last one you go to load into it, and as soon as you load up, the game crashes for the character, and then they get transferred to a private world that was created by hackers.
Huh.
And that kind of becomes your hideout there. It has all the stuff you need, but it's free from the virus because it's not officially on the servers.
Quirky.
Very cool series. I definitely put that in the approve. Had a good impact on me. I loved it.
I'm actually going to toss one more series back into my list because I thought of it while you were talking. Orson Scott Card. Say what you will about the writer, but the Ender's Game verse is incredibly well written and really fascinating. Both because of the Ender's Game trilogy, I think it was, and then the Shadow of the Hegemon trilogy, which it follows along that verse and shows Bean's side of the whole storyline and how that progresses. And he was kind of a side character from Ender's perspective, but I liked his story better than Ender's. And Ender's was fantastic if you read through the entire series. So, even though I forgot it originally, that one definitely resonates with me. Even though I have opinions about the author himself.
Speaking of novels, I can't. There's a novel I can't get into. I was going to mention it when you distracted me with Dot Hack.
Sorry.
It's okay. There are probably people that'll agree with me. It's a huge classic that I could not get past the first chapter of.
Twilight.
No. A real classic. Moby Dick.
Really?
Could not get past the first chapter. It's a long chapter. Like, I know you and Justin have complained about the first chapter of The Hobbit, of The Lord of the Rings. I'd rather read that 10 times in a row than try to go through Moby Dick again. Because that first chapter, I was just like, I think I fell asleep while reading it. And then was just like, nope, don't want to do that. Not interested.
Admittedly, it's been probably since high school since I've read it, so I can't really speak towards that one anymore. I do like the movie adaptations of it. I think the most memorable one was with Gregory Peck. His was nice, because you can just watch it. You don't have to read the whole thing. It was a good adaptation. But
I loved Treasure Island. That was a fun read. And if you're looking for a good movie adaptation, The Muppets Treasure Island is always a good...
True.
It's a good retelling. But I think that, I mean, I could go on for... I'm sure we all could go on forever if we really put our brains to it. But I think that's enough for for me. That gets the idea across. Go watch Dot Hack and play the games. Watch Cowboy Bebop.
I'm going to toss this one over to Calvin, but another one that I kind of thought of, but I haven't really listened to and read all of it. Coheed and Cambria's story between their albums and their graphic novels.
Mm.
What bits I've read are fantastic, but their publication schedule makes it a little tricky to keep it all in my head.
Gotcha.
Calvin's turn.
Now, this was a very difficult list for me to compile because, like, mostly everything that I can think of, I haven't seen within the last in at least 3 years. And after three 4 years, everything starts to get fuzzy for me. So I remember like everything on my list. I remember like bits and pieces, but I do remember me like really getting into it. So with that being said, for video games, the Half-Life 2 series. I was huge on Half-Life 2 and the 2 episodes that came after that. I don't know, like Gordon Freeman is one of my favorite people, and like seeing the story progression between him and Dr. Vance and his daughter Alex, and just basically the hell they went through trying to just stay alive. Except one of them didn't make it at the end of episode 3, and it really pissed me the hell off because Valve has not made any new Half-Life 2 in any sequel to Half-Life 2 or any continuation of Half-Life 2 since then. So one of my favorite characters died, and I'm pissed about it. All
I
right, so,
remember you playing that back in college, too.
yeah,
It was
it's been
fun to watch.
Someday I'll play that too. But first I have to actually finish Half-Life.
uh, let's see. Yeah, that was really all I could think of for video games. For anime, of course, top of my list was Cowboy Bebop. I really want to revisit that one because like, there's so many things I loved about that show, but there's also so many things I've forgotten since it's been several years since I've run through the whole thing. But between the storyline, the universe, and the music, everything just came together beautifully for me, and it's just one of those things that always sticks out in my head. Another show that like really caught my attention for the exact same reasons as Cowboy Bebop, the Ghost in the Shell standalone complex series.
The Ghost in the Shell verse is another one that I've seen bits and pieces of, but I just never stuck it through. Which bothers me because what bits I've seen are incredibly good and really nicely put together, but I think there's just a time investment I never bothered with.
Yeah, that's the tough thing about anime or like any ongoing series. Like as much as you love it, if you can't make the time for it, it just makes it very difficult to try to stick through. But if you can find time to get through Ghost in the Shell standalone complex, you definitely should. I know I'm definitely going to pay it another visit and also try to run through Solid State Society. because that was third season, I believe it was. 'Cause there was Standalone Complex Second Gig, and Solid State Society.
Why'd they change the name per season?
I didn't even know there was a third season.
I have to go. I have to go back and I just got to go back and just check that all out again. Let's see. What else? Wolf's Rain. Will can understand.
Gross sobbing.
One of these days I'm going to finish that damn series. And it's all on Hulu as well, for free. You don't even need the subscription, so I have no real solid excuse.
As long as you can prepare yourself for the fields trip you're going to experience towards the end, it's a great series.
No story, no manga, no movie, no series, no book, no anything ever made me cry as much as the ending of Wolf's Rain. I've cried for a few things, but none as much as freaking Wolf's Rain. I cried at the end of Final Fantasy X. I cried at the end of Cowboy Bebop. I cried at the end of Pokemon, the first movie. Those were nothing but light mistings. Frickin' Wolf's Rain broke me.
I think I've mentioned this before. Like I very rarely cry through like any stories or any series. Yeah, Wolf's Rain broke me too. Just great storyline, well-developed characters, great action, great music too. Good grief. Fantastic series. So yeah, I got one more here. It was called Shingetsutan Tsukihime. It was a 12 episode series that was about a young man who had a special power where he could see literally see like a person's lifelines. You can see like the lines on a person's body, and if you cut through those lines, you'd kill them immediately. Now, one day after school, he completely went mental and attacked the first person that he saw on the street and killed her. The following day at school, he sees her waiting for him. As it turns out, the woman that he killed was a vampire.
So she didn't stay dead.
Nope, she did not stay dead. And from that point on, he was stuck with her. And they go through like really wild ass series of adventures and mishaps trying to take out the main evil vampire in the town. So that was a series I enjoyed. It was a short series, but I loved it. A lot of interesting plot twists in it. And that's one I would recommend for you guys if you can. If you can find find if Netflix or Hulu or Crunchyroll is subbing it, or subbing it or dubbing it.
If you spell it for us, maybe.
Okay, all right.
I don't know. Crunchyroll might have it. They've gotten pretty impressive with their listings lately.
All right, so excuse me. Those were a couple of storylines that really caught my attention. Now, here I have only two things that really did not catch my attention, but I have an asterisk next to that. I didn't get into it because Either I couldn't invest the time to get into it, or it I just wasn't in the mood for it at that moment. But I'd be willing to revisit them. So the first one is Naruto. I would love to get into Naruto, but I
In
like
which media format?
the anime.
Okay.
But what's funny about Naruto, like I remember why I couldn't get into it. It was 2003, and I had missed like 40 episodes of it over, like well over 40 episodes of it already. And I was like, I'm getting ready to graduate high school and get into college. I'm not gonna have time to watch all those previous episodes. Forget it. Not
If you
realizing it was gonna run for another 30 some odd years, or whatever, however long it lasted.
if you want to power through the anime, I would recommend talking to Richie because as he did the Naruto podcast or Konoha Corner podcast, he can tell you which episodes in the first series you can probably overlook because it's just so much filler.
Mm.
I powered through the first series, which was just Naruto, and after a certain plot point, it's just pure filler. You
Oh.
really don't need to bother. It was painful to get through. Then Naruto Shippuden follows Naruto kind of as a sequel series and continues the storyline from the manga all the way to the finish. But it's definitely worth watching the original Naruto for at least the beginning parts of the plot, I feel like.
If you're also interested, I have most of the manga of Naruto.
Okay.
The manga is really good.
It is. I just haven't had the spare cash to get the extra volumes, and it wasn't as high priority as other mangas I'm reading. But I have up to probably about halfway through the Great Ninja War.
Which is the last main
Yeah.
story arc.
Yeah, it's the last story arc. So, volume really high number.
Yeah. Well, wasn't it like 600 volumes or something ridiculous like
That's
that?
probably chapters, but yeah.
Yeah.
Good grief.
Yeah. I kind of pitch the manga more than the anime simply because of how the anime puts in so many filler arcs and certain catchphrases which are really overused.
Yeah, you don't have to deal with catchphrases in the manga because there aren't any. There are none.
Okay.
And I loved the art style in the manga.
I'm definitely gonna have to check it out. Like, I'm definitely willing to give it a chance. Give it the chance I was unable to 12 years ago. Good grief. Lord, that was 12 years ago.
12 years ago, the series wasn't finished. Now there is a very clear end.
If you're really looking to waste a lot of time, try getting into Inuyasha from beginning to end.
No, I'm good. I was into Inuyasha for a while, but then it just kind of petered off for me.
There's also Bleach.
Forgot to add that one to my list of lost interest in.
Yeah, that was a fantastic series, a really nice concept, really great characters, and there was character progression for each of the various characters in the groups. But it just kept going.
Yeah, it had all those things until about the end of the first real main story arc, which was the Soul Reaper Society story arc.
What is that? Taking down Aizen?
Before that, rescuing Rukia.
Oh, okay.
And then the whole taking down Aizen in Hueco Munjo kind of added stuff, but there were a lot of repeated themes.
Yeah, it became very formulaic. But the Hueco Mundo stuff was interesting what was added into the universe. But
I intend to finish that story arc and then call it quits there. I'm not going to get into what came after that because I've heard about it. It sounds really weird and unnecessary.
there were some incredible parts after that when the next big bad group comes in and things get turned upside down in
Yeah, isn't that when all their swords become animate and rebel against them?
I think that's the one after that even.
Oh, after
I'm talking
that.
about the ones where some other big bad group comes in and they can effectively steal or neutralize the swords.
Fun. Super fun.
The only plot point in that entire arc I really liked was the main Soul Society commander, the giant dude who was all bald and old, and no one messed with him because he was the most powerful, or more powerful than all of the others combined.
Yeah.
What his sword could do was ridiculous.
Oh, they don't show what it does until like that story arc?
Yeah, it's almost reality breaking. And then what they do right after that in like the next chapter, like, no, done. I give up. I refuse. That's my equivalent of the anime Nope. After that, just done. That made me so angry. What were we talking about?
Yeah, storylines I didn't get into.
Let's get back to those.
I just got one more. And CJ, you may not like this, but I didn't get into Rurouni Kenshin.
I got nothing wrong with that.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't finished it yet either. And
reading it or watching it?
Watching it. I wouldn't mind reading it because I'm always curious how the two formats differ, and I've always found the mangas to be more engaging than the anime.
I have the entire series if you're interested.
I might have to take you up on that at some point.
I have the Viz Big version, three volumes per volume with
Nice.
a lot of extra content, even some side stories and extra stories and stuff.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I've gotten through, I guess, half of the series, which I thought was the ending. They confront the main person that they've been spending like 40 episodes getting to, and how all that goes down, and I thought, that was really nicely done. Oh, here's a few wrap-up episodes. Wait, why is there someone new now? What is this? Why is this still going? I think I still have 20 or 30 episodes to go. I don't know if I'll do it. I may just migrate to the manga, see if I can get through it that way.
I didn't watch much of the anime, but the manga is a very good read.
Calvin, continue with your version of this. We keep interrupting.
Oh, well, that was actually it.
Yeah. What about it was it that you couldn't get into, or just overall?
I think I'm at this point I'm really not sure. That's why I put it under the asterisk. I'm willing to revisit it. I don't know. Maybe at that point in my life, I had the attention span of a quarter of a goldfish, but I just couldn't get into it. Maybe if I watch it again, I could kind of see what I couldn't kind of grab onto last time.
I push for the subtitled versions just because of some of the voiceover work of the dubbed versions, unfortunately.
Ed loved reading Rurouni Kenshin and had to give up and do an anime nope on the anime just because of the voice acting. Same thing with Trigun. He loved reading it, could not watch it.
I tried so hard to get into Trigun. I loved the storyline, but it petered off for me. One of those that really petered off for me. I couldn't finish it.
I know nothing about Trigun. All I know is that the artwork I really like, and I've heard good things about it. So that's one I would give a shot eventually, somewhere down the road.
Again, I have that one for reading. It's tricky to read, though, because with the art style, it's not always easy to tell who's talking. Because he'll draw characters on a screen, on a scene, in a still, or whatever, in a box. Everyone will have either all of their mouths will be open or all their mouths will be closed. People are talking, but there's just a bubble, and there's no little indication as to who that bubble goes to. It's just a bubble. So sometimes you kind of have to infer who's saying what.
I'm not very good at that.
But all in all, it was a great series to read. Although it's 2 series. It's Trigun and then Trigun Maximum. It was a little trippy.
I think the only other series that I would toss on I wouldn't mind checking out eventually is Inuyasha. The only reason I never got into it is because of Adult Swim and their freaking ads for it. All I saw was that and nope, not doing it.
I watched some of it on Adult Swim. I watched the first season, or maybe the first 2 seasons, and I was like, this is getting really close to a climactic boss battle. This series must be over soon. And my roommate was like, no, you're about an eighth of the way through this series. And I was like, I don't want to make that kind of commitment. Never mind, and I stopped watching it.
I think that's another one where I'd probably go more for the manga. But someday.
Which ad were you talking about, CJ? Was it the one that went Kakome Inuyasha Kakome Inuyasha?
I had to mute that one after it aired so many freaking times. If they make ads making fun of it that much, then why should I take this seriously? And I mean, the time period it's set in and the concepts of some of the characters are fascinating. I'm sure I would actually enjoy it. But the way it's portrayed in the ads, nope.
Unfortunately, those ads are somewhat accurate to some of the episodes, where we basically might as well have just been that for half an hour.
Manga it is.
I don't know if the manga's any better.
Maybe someday I'll find out, and then I'll get back to y'all.
I thought of a couple manga that stuck with me. I think talking about things that made me cry, remembered this one. If it made me cry, it stuck with me, clearly. Ai Yuri Aoshi.
I remember you mentioning that one in past conversations, but I don't remember anything about it.
It's at the base another harem story, but it is incredibly romantic harem story, with the added twist of the main male character is technically betrothed to one of the female characters, but they have to keep it a secret. And meanwhile, there's a whole bunch of other female characters who have varying levels of crushes on the main male character, but there are really only 2 who were deeply in love with him, and they didn't even know they were competing with each other for him. And there was a scene where the one who wasn't betrothed to him kind of broke down and admitted her feelings to herself in private, and just reading that made me cry because of how harsh it was. But it was a very good series.
All right, we've been talking for this for an entire hour at this point, so last remarks.
I think it's our only talkie point.
Yeah, last remarks. Everyone gets one more if they so choose.
I think I've spoken my piece here.
All right.
Never forget if it makes you cry.
Which is a good segue to the one that I was going to add to mine. The only visual novel that either made me cry or just get up and walk away. Katawa Shoujo. I still want to do a recording or have someone else play so they can understand. It's not quite on the same level as Wolf's Rain in regards to emotional connections, but I want other people to understand my pain because of how well the characters were put together. But yes, for our viewers and listeners out there, I've seen various comments coming in. Post in the comments which various series and stories and whatnots have resonated with you, which ones kind of fell flat. Are there any that you'd be willing to take another look at sometime in the future? It just didn't do it for you at some point, but you might want to give it another shot someday. Post in the comments, continue the conversations. And with that, it's time to roll into the highlights reel. We have all sorts of goodies for you today. First off, let's pop on the screen share over to the right screen, like so. The first news piece that came in for this week is, we mentioned in one of the previous episodes about how Fight Club is getting a sequel in a graphic novel format. Well, the first 6 pages has been debuted in Playboy, which is relatively appropriate for the content. I mean, Playboy does have decent articles and stories and all that, so why not? And the link that I gave was to Topless Robot, which you may think is similar to Playboy because of the name, but no, it's really just an interesting news website that happened to talk about it. It does have the link to the actual Playboy article, though, which is thankfully safe for work if you're watching this at work. But it does have some pretty nice artwork and illustration, I feel like, for Dark Horse. I'm hesitantly intrigued as to how this is all going to play out because, again, Fight Club was an incredible story, but do you really need to continue it is the thing. I'm still not sold on needing to continue the storyline. You can go check out the 6 pages. It has it in readable size and all that, so you can kind of see just what's going to happen, or at least a little preview. But yeah, I'm hesitantly hopeful that it'll actually be decent and work out, because it's always disconcerting to see people try sequels or adaptations or evolutions to stories and then it just peters out or doesn't quite work out. It would be nice to see one of these succeed, especially for a story that was that good back in the day. And oh, I already had it up as another tab. Another article from Topless Robot is describing various things of why the Kingsman movie, which I thought looked pretty good in the trailers. I actually wanted to see it, I just never got the chance. But there's a few things that don't quite sync anymore with the modern audiences, and they kind of delved into that, which they did a really good job of digging into the whole spy movie genre. And, I mean, their 6 main points are: the timeline is too bloody quick. Because The Kingsman was kind of like The Watchmen. It was a graphic novel first. And in the graphic novel, you can put a fair amount of content and storyline and character arcs. In a 2-hour movie, it gets kind of crammed together, which doesn't always translate, which just seems to be a going trend with movie adaptations, unfortunately. And they also mention how the best action scenes are left on the cutting room floor. Now, I haven't read the graphic novel series or seen the movie, so I can't speak in regards to personal experience between the two, but the artwork that they show in regards to the graphic novels, I would read that, and chances are I would enjoy it, and it looks like there's a lot of action sequences. I don't know how much you can cram into like a 2-hour movie in comparison. And the next point, they really go into depth on that one, just so you know, for our audio listeners. I'm still scrolling down because they show a lot of bits and pieces of the graphic novel. Where is the next damn point? Seriously. There it is. The familial element that holds the story together is gone. So there is a family storyline in the graphic novel. Apparently, that didn't make the cut in the movie. Admittedly, not everything can translate from book to movie, but I'm curious if they made it into like two movies or if they had done a mini series perhaps. They might have been able to better balance all of that out. I mean, this is an article that made me actually want to grab the graphic novel at some point because it really does look like a very good storyline overall. And the movie trailer itself made me want to go check it out because it seemed like an interesting tale. So there's that. The next point was most of the exploration of Shav culture is also gone. As they specify, Shav is the Brit slang equivalent to wannabe gangsta. Just that concept makes me want to read the graphic novels and disappointed that they couldn't fit something like that into the movie because that sounds like it would be very interesting to see. And Vaughn makes Miller's story too clean. That is just an unfortunate thing that you're going to get with movie adaptations more often than not because of the rating system. Books, graphic novels, all that are not as significantly rated as movies are. They have a lot more that they need to. There are a lot more politics involved in movies, unfortunately. So that one I can kind of understand just without even really going too deep into their explanation of that. But again, it is unfortunate. They make a good point. Graphic novels, again, I'm thinking of The Watchmen because I read the graphic novel and saw this movie. The graphic novel, there was a lot in there that didn't make it into the movie for various reasons. Because you got to get a certain rating if you want to get it out into the theaters. And they also mentioned the economic class issues and fun action are really hard to mix well. That one I have a feeling is more significant towards the time of when this graphic novel was published versus the movie when it's come out. Modern culture has shifted considerably since these types of spy movies and plots have been created. They also continue on another page with more even as to like why concepts like James Bond and this movie and others don't necessarily resonate anymore because a lot of the concepts are comparatively dated. Either the technology has shifted or certain societal concepts just have changed considerably since then. Like acceptable movie violence is a different arena than it was 50 years ago. That's true. Movie violence has changed a lot in 50 years. We can do a lot more than we used to be able to in 50 years ago, partly for technological advancements and because a lot more we can just get away with, even with the rating systems, than action movies from back in the day. But apparently with back in the day when this was created, they also specified that deformed, deranged, and crippled are no longer easy targets for humor. That is true. Society has changed in that respect. There are certain people, certain things that we don't really make fun of the way we used to, for good reason. Deformed, deranged, crippled, religious beliefs, sexual orientations, all of that has become considerably controversial and more talked about in modern society than it was back then. It wasn't just accepted as something you could make fun of. They even reference the interesting adaptation of Wild Wild West, where Will Smith's character makes fun of the main villain because he's in a wheelchair, and the villain makes fun of Jim West because he's black, because, hey, racial jokes back in the day. That made a very good point in their article. And also, we live in an era that's far more aware of sexism. What is it? I feel like Austin Powers parodies a lot of that type of stuff that in the older spy movies was just taken for granted. But now people are a lot more aware of it and a lot less accepting of sexism. So you can't really use it for comedy, and you really shouldn't. So it's interesting how they specified that one as well. And then they wrap it up with Sam Jackson shows us that we'd fail as Bond villains. And that one's worth going into. It has minimal spoilers as to regards of the main villain and how it all goes down, but the main villain is someone that we can relate to. It's no longer just black and white, this guy is bad and we should hope that he goes down. There's a lot of anti-heroes and anti-villains nowadays, so it's harder to see older style stories adapted like one for one into modern day media because of these reasons, because so many concepts have changed. This is a really quick summary of this article. It really is worth reading. It's a lot longer than what I made it out to be, but it's definitely worth a look. And the next one for news was from The Mary Sue, where they actually talk about depression, psychology lessons from Harry Potter. Yes, Harry Potter came out a good while ago now, but they recently associated a lot of the concepts and pieces from the Harry Potter verse towards depression and various other social stigmas. The main point there was the whole Dementors and how they're able to suck out all happiness and cause depression and hopelessness and all that. It basically is just a physical form of what depression feels like. And they made a point of it going into that, which it was an interesting read. And I mean, again, the Cruciatus curse and how it portrays suffering, the whole Bogart and what your various fears are and stuff like that. I thought it was a fascinating read. I'd be curious to see what other viewers and listeners have to say on it if they get a chance to read it and comment. All right, now for something a little more cheerful. We're going to get into some books that are coming out next month, because I did my homework and saw what was coming out next month in March. For some of us, we're intrigued, perhaps, maybe more confused that there is a third Companion's Codex to R.A. Salvatore's verse. This one is The Vengeance of the Iron Dwarf, which apparently continues tales that we're not quite sure how they're continued because of certain plot points that are going on at the time. I know Will had a lot more viable commentary than I did on this one because he's read more of that verse than I have.
I've read everything except for the Cleric Quintet and this.
Well then. Yeah. I'm intrigued by it, mainly because I love that verse, although I'm considerably behind now. So I'll probably wait until this one comes out in softcover rather than hardcover, because all the other ones that I have are softcover, and I like consistency in that respect. And this one comes out, I want to say Wednesday or some such. It comes out the 3rd of March, so Tuesday of next week, before next week's episode. And I also noticed that the movie Big Hero 6 has a manga coming out, Volume 1. I have yet to see that movie, and I'm curious as to which came first. Is it the graphic novel manga thing, or the movie, or what? What was the first format for this story? I haven't done my due diligence on this one, but apparently the Volume 1 for this comes out on the 24th. So actually you have a bit of a wait. You have about a month before this one comes out. But I've heard nothing but good things about Big Hero 6, so I'm kind of intrigued by this one. If I happen to see it around, I might pick it up just to see what it looks like. Next one just intrigued me mainly for the overall verse rather than the individual book, but Kingdom Keepers, the Return Book 1, Disneylands. Apparently there is a Disneylands verse that is partly real world, partly Disneyland. It kind of makes me think of the Kingdom Hearts games in that respect, but I'm intrigued by this. I kind of want to dig deeper on this when I have a chance. I only saw this evening, but it's interesting that Disney has been able to expand even in that into book formats this way. And the overview, unfortunately, doesn't give me anything to work with. It doesn't really give me character names. It doesn't give me villain names. I don't know if they're actually from Disney movies or if they're more generic. So I want to dig a little deeper on this one, but for those curious, this one comes out on the 31st, so all the way at the end of the month. Goodness. And what was the last one? Oh, Instinct, which is the 6th book in the Chronicles of Nick series. I have not read this series, but I've heard other friends talk about it. But the main overview kind of caught my interest. Zombies, demons, vampires, shapeshifters. Another day in the life of Nick Gautier, and those are just his friends. But now that he's accepted the demon that lives inside him, he must learn to control it and temper the very emotions that threaten the lives of everyone he cares for. Any universe that has zombies, demons, vampires, and shapeshifters, especially a demon inside one of the main characters, I'm intrigued by. This is another one I kind of want to dig deeper on and see just what the whole series is about. Because, Lord knows, I don't have enough books to read already. This one comes out also on the 31st. And apparently all of the ebook bundle emails I get are Wednesday afternoon. So just when I think that there aren't new ones while I'm compiling show notes, oh, hey, there are new ones. Story Bundle came out with their newest one today, Action and Adventure. And this one offers up 9 books for sale. It's as previous story bundles, pay what you like. I think the minimum is $1. But for 9 books, minimum is 5, it looks like, that you can preset it to. But if you pay for 15, you get all 9 books. If you pay under 15, you get just the first 5. Personally, none of these really stuck out to me except for The End of Marking Time by C.J. West. Not just because he has the same first name, initials as me, but this one sounds interesting. The gifted housebreaker Michael O'Connor awakens inside an ultra-modern criminal justice system, where prison walls are replaced by surveillance equipment and a host of actors hired to determine if he is worthy of freedom. While he was sleeping, the Supreme Court declared long-term incarceration to be cruel and unusual punishment and ordered 2 million felons released. What could go wrong? The result was utter chaos, and the backlash from law-abiding citizens and police departments reshaped the United States. That description alone kind of has me sold. But that's the only one out of the 9 that actually stuck out for me. For others, by all means, if you want to check out all 9, the 5 that you can get for 14 and under are Primacy by J.E. Fishman, Fatal Exchange by Russell Blake, The End of Marking Time by C.J. West, Parallax View by Alan Leverone, Beyond Justice by Joshua Graham, and if you do 15 or more, you also get Chase Baker and the Golden Condor by Vincent Zandri, Farewell to Dreams by C.J. Lyons, Dark Side of the Moon by J. Carson Black, and Catch and Release by Lawrence Black. And that's over at storybundle.com/action. And you have 22 whole days to check that one out. They still have their Women of the Apocalypse and Kill Screen, which we referenced last week. And the last one over at Humble Bundle, we talked about the Subterranean Press book bundle last week, but they have added 5 more books. It's the last 5 in that overall list, if you've checked it out earlier. This one I actually got because for $15 you get 20 books. It's kind of hard to argue with that price when there's a lot of good stuff in there. The new 5 that they've added on since last time around was Bleeding Shadows by Joe Lansdale, I Travel by Night by Robert McCammon, Salvage and Demolition by Tim Powers, New Amsterdam by Elizabeth Bear, and The Agonizing Resurrection of Victor Frankenstein by Thomas Ligotti. That's the one that sold it for me. The Agonizing Resurrection of Victor Frankenstein really piqued my interest. And I was already debating to get this series anyway, but yeah, that one kind of tipped it over for me. Definitely worth checking out if you appreciate some of the neo-horror, as some of these have been kind of pitching. So that's over at humblebundle.com/books. All of the links to the stuff that I have been rambling on about for the last 25 minutes are in our show notes over at fcwriters.com under episode 80. Go check it out. And stop screen sharing. I said stop. No more. There we go. Okay. Oh, hey, I get to talk some more because it's time for the Productivity and Inspiration Station segment, and I'm up first. Lucky me. All right. I have actually been very productive since last time round to kind of make up for the week where I was not productive at all. I've actually gotten back on track with a lot of the Inspire the Muse day-to-day stuff, and we seem to really be getting a decent schedule sorted out. And I have socialized not once, but twice this week, which is kind of scary, actually. I interacted with humanity on Saturday and Sunday, which was just, it was fun, but slightly odd after being a hermit for so long. And in regards to inspiration, I was going full steam ahead on my Slash and Burn trilogy on a couple nights because I've been listening to a lot of various bands, primarily Icon for Hire, which before this year I'd never heard of them, but for some reason it's really piquing the interest of both Ivy and Adeara within my trilogy, which is dangerous because they're the scariest 2 characters in my series. And I think they're only scary because I know exactly how much I'm going to break them over time, and they're not happy about that. And I have also recently started listening to The Drunk Tank by the Rooster Teeth podcast. It's the Rooster Teeth podcast, but they call it The Drunk Tank because I don't know why. I don't think they ever actually explained it yet. There's over 300 episodes of their podcast. But then again, they've been at this a little longer than we have.
Just a bit.
I've already powered through about 65 of them. I've gone through about 3 to 5 a day. Because I like just having background stuff when I'm working. Either music or just dialogue. And those are very entertaining people to listen to. And it was fascinating going back to like 2009 when they originally started that, listening to some of the parallels of just how much of a shoestring budget they had and just some of the things they did for the job to get things done made me feel like we're actually doing pretty well a year, almost 2 years in, to actually making a concentrated effort towards this thing. So that was actually kind of nice, at least for me. Hey, I get to stop talking finally. It's Will's turn to talk.
It's my turn. Okay, so I did a couple things this past week. I started working on a Short little story, just for me, just for fun. It is for adults only, and I'll probably finish it today or tomorrow and have it up for people to read before the end of the week. And I'm just doing it as kind of like a palate cleanser from writing main big plot point story thing by writing something that doesn't need a big plot or need to relate to any other stories. And I'm having a lot of fun, and it's kind of therapeutic, actually. I recommend everyone should do it every once in a while. Just write random shenanigans stuff. I also completed a couple more character bios for characters from Roommate. I got Tara and Jessica done, and I was happy about that because they were being little so-and-sos and not helping me complete their bios. I had to force information out of them. It made me feel productive. And will come in handy to make sure I don't forget stuff like what they look like, what piercings they have, how tall they are compared to other people. Those are important things to keep in mind that you might forget. And just today, just a little while ago, just before this podcast, I was inspired with the ending of My Roommate's a Stripper, or one of the final scenes. So I figured, I don't want to lose this, because the dialogue in my head, me likey. So I'm writing it down. Because otherwise I'll forget, and that'll be unfortunate. So that was for me. Yay.
Cool. And I'm slowly catching up on commentary from the video, or from the podcast. Apparently that whole Kingdom Keeper series, Maleficent is the main villain. So there are direct Disney villain tie-ins. That seems fitting. Now it's Galvin's turn.
Yes. I think the high point for me in the past week was my actually getting out of the house for a weekend night of this past weekend. That was the first time I've been out of the house for a weekend in, I think, about at least a good month.
Goodness.
So that was a nice change of pace. Other than that, I just continued on with various Inspire the Muse and Infinity's Light related dealings. I recorded and finished editing part 2 of my I Am Bread playthrough. And I do believe I got Will's approval on that one.
Had me laughing, man.
Yeah, I went through quite a range of emotions in that video, so I have no idea when that one's going to be posted, but it'll be a good one.
I look forward to that one.
So that's about it.
Yeah, I guess I would also toss in that it seems like a lot of us have been pretty productive lately, building up a schedule, mainly for game break, and just for all of the various other things that are going on. There's still a lot of things to iron out, but we're getting there.
Yep, slowly but surely. Like having a somewhat set video schedule, I think it helps us all out. I know it helps me out when at least in knowing when to post these videos, and it also helps that in knowing that YouTube has a scheduler function, which works very well.
I already have a change to that schedule that I want to suggest.
Okay.
But we can discuss that off air.
Yes.
All right. With that, what do you know? It's only been an hour and a half, give or take. Let's see. There are some new events that I've tossed into the events list, but it's purely stuff that we're still figuring out logistic possibilities for. Nothing new has been confirmed, unfortunately. We're still waiting on various press possibilities mainly, but all of the events that we are planning on attending in some way, shape, or form are on the events list in the show notes. So go check it out, see where we're going to be. Attend those conventions, come say hello. And yeah, I think that's a show. I know I've talked enough this episode. I think I've commandeered enough of everyone's time. I think it's about time that we start wrapping things up. If we have entertained you in any way, shape, or form during this last hour and a half, not half hour, please subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. You can watch, comment, and thumbs up all of our various episodes. As you've probably noticed, we are already up to episode 80 of Word Ninjas Live, which is pretty freaking awesome, if you ask me. And we're also going full steam ahead in regards to our Game Break series. And for those that haven't been around in a while, we have spun out our Muse Food segment, which is now going to be posted on Saturdays in its own little video. So we're doing all sorts of fun things. So it's definitely worth subscribing and checking back regularly because we're posting things almost every day now. If you want to talk to us via social media, Twitter at FCWordNinja, bonus points if you're using the hashtag WordNinjas. Tumblr, we're over at fcwordninja.tumblr.com. Facebook page is facebook.com/fullcoveragewriters. Converse with us, talk with us, ask us questions. Ask us things that you want us to discuss on the show. We're always looking for more talkie points. And if you want to help fund any of our various endeavors and shenanigans, go peruse our Etsy store, etsy.com/shop/fullcoveragewriters, where we have all sorts of shiny baubles for you to be entertained by, from buttons to bookmarks to books to everything else. Go check it out. All of the purchases do help pay for various audiobook recording costs, convention attendance and coordination, tech recording upgrades, the works. It really helps us out, and we really appreciate it. And as always, the Word Ninjas Live show and all the other various endeavors that we do is brought to you by Full Coverage Writers. You can check all of the various stuff that we do over at fcwriters.com. And with that, time to start signing out. If you want to talk to me personally, you're brave. Not quite sure why you would, but if you want to, you can track me down on my personal Tumblr, fancypantswolf.tumblr.com. Or if you want to keep track of my Slash and Burn trilogy, I'm posting various things about it over at slashandburntrilogy.tumblr.com. And you can occasionally track me down on the Fairy Tale Podcast as Makarov on their YouTube channel, 10 p.m. Eastern Time on Monday nights. All right, where can people find Will?
Mostly you can find me on my Tumblr page at darkhom.tumblr.com. That's spelled DARKHOM. It's just my personal Tumblr blog where I put whatever I feel like it at whatever time it is that I feel like putting it up at is. Words make. Yeah. If you're curious about my writery shenanigans for My Roommate's a Stripper, you can find stuff there at myroommatesastripper.tumblr.com. And hey, I've even started poking back at my Facebook, but I make no promises about any kind of contact there. That's more just me pimping out full coverage writers.
And where can people track down Calvin?
You can find me trolling around Tumblr at instacal.tumblr.com. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ccwii. And on SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/soundsbycalvin.
All right. And if you want to track down any of our other crew members, go to fcwriters.com, click on the About Us page, and all of our various links for each crew member is down there for you to check out. All right, that is a show. Thank you for joining us for episode 80 of Word Ninjas Live. Come back next week for episode 81. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.
Something about some kind of licensing or rights issue because all weapons go through Marcus because he's like the only gun seller on Pandora. So all companies are supposed to legally sell through him because he has a monopoly on the market. And there was I never could finish reading it, but there was some kind of issue with why they weren't allowed on Pandora. And also the cryo weapons. They added the cryo element for freezing people, but you don't see that in Borderlands 2. It just kind of like, yeah, it was a thing on the moon, and it never went on Pandora. A couple other little things. But all in all, I've had fun trying to piece together the overarching story for Borderlands, trying to figure out what company had the control of what planet at what time and why they were kicked off and who replaced them and why, and that's a whole thing I won't get into here too much. But yeah, Borderlands, the whole story, especially like in Borderlands 2, I just loved. Someday I'll check out that I think it's a point and click style adventure from who did it?
It's Tales of Borderlands by
Telltale.
Yeah.
Telltale Games put out a Tales of Borderlands. I'm gonna wait till all the episodes are out though, because they'll probably put like a multi-episode sale out instead of spending full price for each one individually.
Yeah. I'm intrigued by that one. Telltale does some really good storytelling.
Oh yeah. So yeah, that's some of the games. For books, some Michael Crichton stuck with me. Jurassic Park, the novel. Movie was okay. Novel was fantastic.
The novel was incredible compared to the movie, which was respectable in its own rights.
Mm-hmm. And Lost World, the novel, was fantastic. Much better than the movie. They screwed some things up there.
I don't really remember much overlap between the book and the movie. I feel like they departed considerably, but it's been forever since I've read it.
It was weird because they didn't line up the plot. Short is a relative term. Luckily, Ed's not here. I'll start with ones that really held me, really pulled me in. This I'll follow CJ's format for video games. Just so I can keep track of them in my head, otherwise it'll become a jumbled mess. Excuse me. For video games, there were probably a few where I love video games with good stories, and there were a couple of Final Fantasies. Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy X. I almost beat Final Fantasy VIII. I know everything except for what happens immediately after the final boss fight. But I loved that story, and Final Fantasy X is the only Final Fantasy I beat, and I love anyone who's beaten Final Fantasy X can probably attest with me that it's got a great story, matched with good gameplay.
Yay!
Yay! But yeah, I loved Final Fantasy VIII and Final Fantasy X. Would play them again. Want to play them again. Love to play Final Fantasy VIII again and actually beat it someday. That's a huge time investment. And Borderlands 2, I loved the story that they had there. I loved the delivery of the story because they threw in some surprising plot twists here and there that I didn't see coming. So every time they threw it in, I was like, wait, what? 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 Really? This is in my silly little first-person shooter?
How's the Borderlands universe overall, as I think you're the only one on the crew who has played all 3 games?
It holds up fairly well. They've managed to keep some consistencies. There's a little bit that gets a little wonky when they threw in the pre-sequel because they had to do some backpedaling. because it takes place before Borderlands 2. But it mostly works out. It's like little side things, like how they have laser guns in the pre-sequel that aren't in Borderlands 2, and you go, well, why? And there's in a loading screen somewhere it says something about some kind of issue with Marcus, and I could never, when it popped up, my screen loaded too fast, so I never got to read the whole thing to figure out why, but
Chances are Torg blew them all up.
it was...
Coming out soon, and I still want to know what the hell happens to those characters, so I have a feeling it's going to be just as engaging as the first book, which was fantastic, as hopefully Calvin can also attest to.
Yeah, you're not the only one that was incredibly engaged by that book. I'm really looking forward to the second one, just to figure out what the hell is going on and to get some backstories.
Yeah.
I'm particularly interested in one character that we have a bit of contempt for.
I really hope that Michael's at Book Expo this year. I think his book comes out after Book Expo, unfortunately, but hopefully he's at least there to say hello to.
It comes out in June, correct? June or July?
I want to say July. I forget offhand, but I think it was after Book Expo or very close to it, so
Right.
I'd have to double check with him. But yeah, that one I still remember, and it's still on my bookshelf over there. I'm probably going to have to reread it again before I read the second one, just to get back into it with the characters.
And I may have to do the same.
And for those of you who haven't read it, it's definitely worth checking out, because it's a fantastic read.
Yes.
Trippy, though. But in a good way.
Yes, yes.
And I'd probably get in trouble if I didn't mention Fairy Tale, because I'm sure Richie's going to listen to this tomorrow. But no, really, that is one of the best manga series that I have read. The only other ones that have really stuck with me are like Yu Yu Hakusho, because that was one of the first mangas that I actually read from beginning to finish, and that one's considerably better in the manga form than the anime, because they skip a few things at the end, which is sad. Actually, also Fruits Basket for manga. The manga is infinitely better than the anime, because it actually finishes the damn plot. The anime skips so much, and that's a fantastic little series. But now for the ones that I just can't get into. Good evening, ladies and menfolk. Welcome to episode 80 of Word Ninjas Live. We're senior citizens now. We're old. I don't know how that happened.
Time just kind of crept up on all of us, man.
Apparently. As always, I am your instigator of creative productivity and insanity, Charles, and joining me are my regular co-hosts, Will.
Hello.
And Calvin.
What Will said.
The rest of our crew is off doing various dangerous shenanigans for the good of humankind and whatnot. So it's just the three of us tonight. But we still have all sorts of things to talk to you about tonight. The first thing of which is our talking point for the week. And the talking point for episode 80 is, what are examples of storylines that have impressed you, and examples of storylines that have effectively underwhelmed you? So basically those that have stuck with you for good or for bad. And this can be books, anime, manga, video games, movies, TVs, shows, radio sitcoms, whatever source of media you enjoy or appreciate. I will kick things off since I put my reminder notes in the show notes. For the good storylines that actually really resonated with me, for video games, it's got to be Fallout New Vegas. Admittedly, I have yet to finish the actual storyline, but there's so much content built into that world. There's so many side missions and characters and just interesting stuff to see that I can't get enough of it. And it helps that there's also 5 DLCs for it, all of which are fantastic. So that one's definitely one of my favorites for video games. If we're going to go for the more traditional media, like books, I'm actually going to go back to Michael Kep's Invasion of Heaven. That is the name of the overall series, and I'm going to specify that rather than just the first book because I know the second book's coming. And I'm going to probably get some hate for these, or at least some snarky commentary, but for video games, Destiny. Admittedly, it's because I enjoy storylines a lot, or I enjoy character arcs, and Destiny doesn't have that. Destiny is pretty shallow in regards to the storyline. It's more about the gameplay than anything else, and I don't know, I just don't care that much. It's nice, it's really well done, but it's not as engaging as other games out there. As for books, The Silmarillion by Tolkien. It goes so far in depth into the back story of that world, and that's fantastic because it's really nice that he took the time to do all of that, and it's all there. It all ties together, but it is just so dry. I can't stay with it. It's if we want to get contentious, it's like reading the Bible for me. That's how dry it is because there's so many names to remember and keep track of. I just can't do it. And for anime or just video media, the Gundam verse in general, I have yet to get into a single series of Gundam. Period. I don't even know why. I like mechs. I like futuristic series, but none of them have really caught my interest. And I'm not sure why. But yeah, that was really my short list of media out there with storylines that either really caught my attention or really didn't. I think it's really more the ones that have overarching concepts to them that I can either really appreciate or associate with, or ones that have really good character arcs where you see the progression from beginning to end. If it doesn't have that, I don't care. I can't get into it. It's just not for me. I'm curious what other people have to say about this. Hopefully I'm not the only one that has issues getting into storylines sometimes.
Oh no, I've got a short list too.
Hopefully it's not too short. We want to fill out the whole podcast.